Hi, this is Kathy Lewis at Tall Tree Designs, and today we're going to talk about color stranding in knitting, sometimes called fair isle knitting. It's when you use more than one color in a row to create these multicolored patterns that look like this. And it looks really striking and it looks really complicated, but it's really not if you keep a few simple things in mind. So just a couple of rules. 99% of all fair isle or stranded projects are knit in the round, and that's to keep the yarn that you're working with in the right position. It is technically possible to knit flat back and forth, but you won't see it very often, and definitely not in any of my designs. This example that we're looking at is the flaked out poncho from the Tall Tree Designs collection, and it's a great introduction to the technique. It is knit in the round, okay, and the whole thing is done in stocking stitch, which is also very typical of stranded knitting. The only thing you really have to keep in mind as you're knitting is which color you need to knit the next stitch in. So let me just show you quickly what a color chart looks like, because you're going to see these in all color stranded patterns, and this is a typical one here. There's a little legend down here, and the only thing we're worried about is which color is which. Okay, so as in all stranded knitting, 2 colors on each row represented by the white squares and the black squares. All the stitches are knit because stockinette gives you the best results for color stranding. You're going to get the sharpest, clearest pattern if you're using stockinette stitch. And because you're knitting in the round, all of these rows, you're going to read them in the same direction, all right? You're never turning your work and going back in the other direction. So every row is read from right to left, and then you would start again here, right to left. And as I say, you're knitting every stitch, and all you're paying attention to is which color comes next. So here's a little swatch I've got of stockinette stitch, and yes, it is a flat swatch. I'm cheating a little bit because we're not going to do multiple rows. We're just going to do work on this single row, so I didn't have to worry about everything, but the technique will be the same. So the technique that I use is called two-handed stranding, and though it might sound really awkward and difficult, you'll find when you try this that you'll pick it up quickly. It's the fastest, easiest technique that I've found, and the other thing that's nice about it is it tends to help alleviate the pulling and the tightness of stranded knitting. So let me just show you how it works. So we're going to do 3 stitches in our main color, followed by 3 stitches in our contrasting color, and we're just going to alternate back and forth, and I'll show you how it works. So the main color yarn I'm going to hold in my right hand with my right needle. The contrasting color yarn I'm going to hold in my left hand. Okay, so we're going to start, and we're just going to do 3 regular knit stitches with our main color with the working yarn in our right hand. The next 3 stitches are going to be in the contrasting color. And so what we do here is we insert the needle the same way, and we reach over the yarn, the contrasting color in the back, and we pull a loop through, and then that stitch comes off the needle. I'll show you again. So I'm holding this contrasting yarn fairly snugly between my fingers on the left hand, insert the needle, reach over, grab a loop, pull it through, stitch off the needle, reach, hook it, and pull that loop through. Now the next 3 stitches I'm going back to my right hand, and I'm going to knit 3 stitches in the usual way. And now the pattern is asking for 3 in the contrasting color. So again, And this is actually the continental style of knitting that you're doing with the left hand color. Just reaching through, hooking it, and pulling that loop through the stitch on your needle. Okay, that is all of it. That's all there is to it. I'm going to show you on the back. Basically, these little runs of the yarn that you weren't knitting with, they're called floats, okay? And we want to prevent those from getting too tight. That's a key thing. Let me show you on a finished project. We'll go back to Flaked Out. And here's the wrong side of my work. And you can see my floats, okay? They're not pulling at all. They're not puckering the fabric or pulling the design. So that's something that you're going to want to keep an eye on as you're knitting, is that your floats aren't getting too tight in the back here. The other thing you should keep in mind is you don't want these floats to run longer than 4 or 5 stitches. I generally use 4 stitches as a rule of thumb. So if I have a pattern that's asking me to knit, say, 7 stitches of the main color, I would catch the float of the coordinating color after 3 or 4 stitches to keep these from getting too long and loose. When they get long and loose, you can catch them when you're putting the garment on and off. It will pull the pattern and make a bit of a mess. And if you have a look on my channel, you'll see I have another video tutorial all about catching floats with two-handed stranding. And you can take a look at how to do that there. There's one more thing that I want to stress when you are doing this two-handed stranded knitting is whatever hand you start off with. If you're holding your main color in your right hand, for example, and the coordinating color in your left, make sure that you keep that consistent throughout the project. Basically, even though you're knitting the same stitches with the same colors, if you swap those around at some point, the color dominance is affected. And it's hard to explain, but it will make a dramatic and noticeable difference in how the pattern looks. So the simplest thing to do is, in my mind, I generally designate main color for right hand, complementary color for left, and then I don't get confused and mix it up in the middle of a project. So that's everything you need to know to get started on color stranded knitting, and you're going to see that it's a whole lot of fun to watch these patterns come to life.